All right. 1 second. So what I want to do is I'm just going to go over how the law of supply and demand and Wyckoff really work, and then give examples. All right. So, give me 1 second. So if you can see this, see this, right? So when price is low, demand is all the way up here. So when price is low, demand is all the way up here. It's high. When price is low, supply is low. And vice versa. When price is high, supply is high, and demand is low. The quantity, volume is low. Very important. You can find this in any economics textbook. This is the foundation of economics and price discovery. This is it. All right. So that's what makes this. This is the law of supply and demand. And you can just look up any book. All right, and it's more than that. It's just common sense. If price is low, would you buy or sell? You obviously buy. If price is high, what would you rather do? Sell. When price is high, you sell to make a profit. And when price is low, you buy because it's cheap. When it's expensive, you don't want to buy, you want to sell. And when it's cheap, whatever it is that you want is cheap, you want to buy. So this is a common sense law of supply and demand. But what I'm going to show you is how this really works in creating turning points and Wyckoff. All right, like I'll show that how this basically manifests in the market. Now, the other thing to remember is it's not really linear like this. It's not linear, meaning this is like an oversimplified model. So what you really need to know is these two things. Right here and right there. What is that saying? What is this saying? It's saying at a high price, you have high, supply and low demand. All right? This is what this is saying. I'll put it right here. At a high price, you have high supply and low demand. Now pay attention because I'm going to show how this links to Wyckoff. So at a high price, you have high supply and low demand. Now, the thing to remember is there's no sequence. Is it high price for high supply first and then low demand, or low demand first and then high supply? It's just at a high price, both elements, high supply and low demand, are going to present themselves. And at low price, low supply, should put high demand, and low supply will present itself. Okay? You will find this. And you know what this is going to do? It's going to create a turning point. All right? Now I'm going to explain. Now I'm going to turn it into Wyckoff. All right? Watch. At a high price, a bearish change of behavior, and a low, what is it called? Low LP, not LPS, I forget what it's called. Lack of demand. And wave, basically, will be identified. At a low price, bullish change of behavior. And I know by now, if you've watched any of my videos, you know that this is just a sign of strength, right? And lack of supply, right? At a high price, this is how he linked it, and this is exactly what happens. At a high price, high supply and low demand, you know, there will be a high. And you'll see this. This is exactly what happens. Okay, all right. So from the perspective of supply and demand, with the base of everything, at a high price there will be high supply and low demand. At a low price there will be high demand and low supply. Turning this into a Wyckoff, words. At a high price there will be a bearish change of behavior and a lack of demand. And at a low price there will be a bullish change of behavior and lack of supply. You could substitute. This with, that's a sign of weakness. Same thing. Bearish COB, sign of weakness, or bullish COB, sign of strength. Okay? Very important. Very, very important. Now you could see how the law of supply and demand directly ties into the Wyckoff behaviors. Okay? This is how it's the same thing. That high supply and low demand is your sign of weakness, followed by that lack of demand wave, that little wave. It was called feathers weight. It was called LPSY or whatever the hell they're going to call it, right? It's just whatever it's called. This is it. It's the same exact thing, right? And what else is really important is that at a high price, there will be a bearish change of behavior, meaning a sign of weakness and a lack of demand, creating a turning point. What you don't find in these graphs is that once they hit a point, they go backward. Price goes backward. You see how price is increasing? And then supply is increasing and demand is decreasing. Well, what happens when demand is too low? And supply is really high and demand is too low. If supply is really high and demand is too low, price reverses in the opposite direction. And that's according to economics. It goes the other way. So as supply increases and demand decreases at a price, as price is increasing, there will be a turn. That turn will now shift price in the opposite direction, taking it lower. As it goes lower, what do you think happens to supply? It goes down, and demand also goes down. Then they hit another extreme. When they hit another extreme, what do you think happens? Demand is too high and supply is too low. Then you know what happens? Another turning point. The process of this, these are your rotations in the market. What I did here. These are your rotations in the market, basically your turning points. When price goes up, demand it weakens, supply gets stronger, it rotates. Just like that. It rotates back and forth, back and forth. Okay, now the key thing is there's a trend turning point. So what happens here All right, and now I'm going to put it in the context of a trend. Is you will see here, for example, the volume like that. Then mess this one up like that. Then like that. Then like that. So it's going to be declining. Okay, you want to the volume for each one of these waves is going to be declining because you're looking at the demand. What should be happening with demand? It's going to be declining, and this pattern will avail itself. This pattern of declining volume is saying that as price rises, as the market rallies, demand is going to be decreasing, just like this law of supply and demand indicates. All right, it's going to do that until it gets very small. At that time, you will have your sign of weakness. Okay, you will have your sign of weakness. And so you have both these elements. You'll have your lack of demand and you have your sign of weakness. Now, here's the thing. You don't know if the lack of demand comes first or the sign of weakness comes first. What happens is, and I'll show you this even today, all right? The lack of demand may come first and then the sign of weakness, or the sign of weakness may come first and then the lack of demand. Whatever the case is, and as you know, if you've studied David Weiss's material and Wyckoff material, is basically indicates this, right? So price is increasing. What happens to demand? It decreases. So you have very low volume here, and supply presents itself. So you have this heavy selling wave. But you could also have the lack of demand right after the sign of weakness. It can happen before, after, or both. Okay, when it happens after this, David used to call it the feather's weight, but you can call it whatever you want. It's lack of demand. I think LPSY, something like that. Call it that if you like. Doesn't really matter. It's going to be weakness. Here's the other point. Demand has 3 dimensions, and supply as well. Both supply and demand have 3 dimensions. The first is obviously price, right? 2 is volume, and 3 is time. From the volume perspective, the lack of demand up here will be basically your lack of demand. It will be low volume, right? Your lack of demand. From a price perspective, it will be a small wave, which many times you call shortening of the thrust. So this supply and demand weakness, supply and demand weakness will present itself as a shortening of the thrust or a low volume lack of demand wave, a small volume like I showed right here, the small wave volume right here. Okay, from a time perspective, that usually happens also right here. It will be like maybe 1 to 2 bars. It's going to be a very small wave, 1 to 2 bars. So if it's a 5-minute chart, it's typically 5 to 10 minute wave. That's how the weakness will present itself. It really doesn't matter. What matters is that you understand that price is at a high. What happened at that high? From a perspective of volume and quantity, there was low volume, which is your lack of demand, and that means that demand decreased, and there was an increase in supply, which is your sign of weakness, or your change of behavior, or I think they call it change of character, or that doesn't really matter, but the point is that supply is now turning the market. So this right here is this, from the graph, is this piece. And then this, and then you know what happens? What I'm putting in this circle is this here: high supply, low demand. High supply as a sign of weakness, and low demand. All right. What happens afterwards? Price goes down because the trend has changed. It goes down. If price is going down, what does that mean? It means now you're going the other way on this chart. You've reversing. See, at the price high, you had high supply and low demand. That created the turning point, which means that now you're going the other direction. Until what? Until the same thing. Until you hit this point where you have high demand and low supply, which will show itself typically as low volume and or shortening of the thrust. And then you'll have your demand. So let's put this as lack of supply, or your SOT, right? From lack of supply from the perspective of volume, shortening of the thrust from the perspective of price, followed by your sign of strength or change of behavior. And then after that, it's going to go up. How far and all that, I'm not going to get into that. But basically, if it's short term, it'll just go from level to level. All right, that's what's going to happen. And the other key thing to mention here is, in here, a lot of times, this is one way it's going to terminate. The other thing is, instead of seeing this, you might get this big volume right here. That means that this is not your this is not an expression of demand. It is actually your climax, which is just an expression of supply. All right. So again, you could have scenario 1 where you have a lack of demand with that little volume, or scenario 2 where all of this demand at a high comes in. That is your climax. And that climax cannot be thought of as demand. It is the presence of this right here, supply. It's going higher, but that going higher is not really demand. It's actually supply. So that's what it is. You cannot say like, okay, it's all of a sudden it's climaxing or capitulating or whatever. That really is not demand. It's supply on the way up, followed by supply on the way down, creating that sign of weakness after the climax. So that's how you want to think about it. And if you understand this, then you understand that this is how the price turns and goes down. And on the economics chart, it'll just go the other way until, it hits an extreme where you have high demand and low supply, and then the change occurs. Okay. So now I'll just show this. If I can get it over here. I'll give some examples. Remember, both need to be present. If you have one, it's not going to work. If you just see supply, if you just see lack of demand, it's not going to work. And yes, you can create signals and all that, but you still need judgment because the market is volatile and the wave sizes change. So there's a lot of that. So in this case here, it goes up, up, up. You get some lack of demand here, but do you have supply? No, unconfirmed. Keeps going up. What happens? Climactic behavior, right there. That is the presence of supply. How do you know it's the presence of supply? Why the hell would 196 come up here when it could come at the bottom? Obviously supply, and confirmed by the heavy drop afterwards. So as price increases, what happened? Supply presented itself, and demand, or the lack thereof, also presented itself. In this case, the lack of demand did not come before the change, but after the change. Right here, 26 is less than 196, 62, 50, 77, 82, and 109. What is that telling you? You have supply, you have some more supply, and you have lack of demand. Both elements of increase in supply and decreasing demand, taking prices lower, and basically they went down more after that, after it tested. Here again, you have that lack of demand followed by the supply, and what happens? It came up here to test and went back down. There's a lot of examples of this. Remember, you need both. So when you have this supply and then you have this, for example, demand coming in, you have a little shakeout and then price goes higher. Here again, 2 times you have a lack of demand. This one is like obvious. Price going higher, what happened? Lack of demand, increase in supply, price goes down. Now what happens? Lack of supply, lack of supply, lack of supply, until demand comes in. When demand comes in, it goes higher until it climaxes. And if the trends are bigger, you can kind of see this. But if they're not, you can't see this. So the point that I'm trying to make is that this law exists in the market, but it's not as simple as just creating an indication. What you need to do is use some common sense, attach it to levels, understand what context is, and you'll see that it happens over and over again. Climaxes all the time terminating trend, and remember this: both need to exist together. That's just the way it is. Both need to exist together. When you see a market that's going up and there's lack of demand, just be ready for a potential supply to come in. And if the supply comes in, it actually validates the lack of demand. Both need to exist together. They always, either the lack of demand will come before the increase in supply at a high price or after it, with, showing that low volume pullback. Anyway, this was the linking of supply and demand and how they connect to Wyckoff turning points. And what you can do now is go check for yourself and see how many times you'll see turning point. Just take a look at any turning point. I guarantee you, if you take a look at like 10 of them, at least 8 will show you the increase in supply and decrease in demand, and vice versa. They will be evident on at least 8. In my opinion, I can see them all the time. All right. Thank you all. Bye.